Hello again, hope you're all doing well. Can you ask for shared parenting when the parties hate each other with almost the fire of 1,000 suns? Up until recently, my answer would have been no, but then the appellate courts issued some very interesting decisions that changes everything. Before we get into those decisions though, I do want to give a quick update on the domestic violence case law roundup. Now we're up to 33 decisions and well, it's climbing every day it seems. This has everything from 2025 to present. When I say everything, I'm talking a table of contents with previews, case law, an appellate checklist so you don't miss anything at trial, and of course what we all came for, the summaries, man. All joking aside, I think it's the most comprehensive guide I've made thus far. And if you want a cheapest free copy, well, it's easy. All you gotta do is subscribe and you'll get notified when it's ready to download. Okay, joint 50-50, equal parenting, shared parenting, whatever you want to call it. When I first started practicing law, like in 1992, it was the holy grail of working class dads because, well, aside from Perez, which only really approved of 50-50 in like low conflict cases, the trend in the state commanded two things. First, joint custody, well, that only went to parties who worked well together. And two, kids benefited from a home base when it came to dividing up parenting time, a primary place that they called home. That's our home base rule. What this meant in English is if mom did not want to do joint custody or 50-50 or both, in most instances, dad had to pay money he probably didn't have to overcome all that case law at trial. And in my experience, I know this is going to anger a few people, but there are just some counties where it didn't matter what the facts were. 50-50 parenting time at trial was just something that just did not happen. But then, as always, things change. First, my case, Virgin, is the one I'll probably always be known for, my Come On Eileen, and it is, at least until something better comes along, the leading case on shared parenting. In Virgin, I represented dad. I argued mom was too high conflict for 50-50. The appellate court agreed and reversed. So coupled with Perez, Virgin created this, these are my words, a thermometer, and suddenly 50-50 decisions were dropping all over the place. It was no longer a gimmick father's rights lawyers sold to get dads to pay them tens of thousands of dollars to litigate. It was a very attainable thing in certain cases, and those certain cases suggested that maybe some conflict could be overlooked, but you don't push the maybe, baby. Now, proponents of joint 50-50 have recently argued that it serves as a prophylactic measure in cases where the parties hate each other so much that the moment you award the keys to one is the moment they lock the other parent out. In those cases, they suggest 50-50 benefits the kids because it functions like a check and balance system. This check and balance idea was first hinted at in McAllister. There, the trial court awarded 50-50, even though the parties did not have a real cozy relationship. Now, McAllister didn't say they couldn't work together, only that they struggled. However, the testimony from the 60410 indicated 50-50 was needed to, quote, balance the playing field, end quote, because in their view, if one were given the keys, they would use it to manipulate the other party. Fast forward to another one of my appeals, Gore. There, the trial court awarded joint 50-50 despite the parents', as you noted in the opinion, incompatibility. I argue that friction made a joint 50-50 award contrary to longstanding case law. The appellate court reverses, but, there's always a but, it was for technical reasons. So they didn't get to that issue, but on the last page, they kind of do, suggesting it's possible such an arrangement might be in the children's best interests. Yeah, so at this point, the seed has clearly been planted and harvest time comes in McLean. A medium conflict case. Traditionally, that's probably a no-go zone for 50-50, but like McAllister and Gore, the 604 testifies that if one parent had the keys, the other would be locked out. The judge grabs onto that concept and uses it as a justification to award joint 50-50, even though the 60410 was not on board with dividing time and decision-making equally. So when it goes up on appeal, the appellate court is like, yeah, you know what? Looking at the record here, we're kind of cool with this check and balance resolution. So it was only a matter of time before we got RC. In RC, the parties fought bitterly. And then, paradoxically, they agreed to that holy 50-50 grail in 2019. Everything shared except education, which went to dad, but the in-court fighting continues unabated. 2 years later, dad moves to Michigan. Mom gets majority time. Dad then moves back. There are some issues with dad's use of his educational powers for the kids, and he also had some sort of dust up with the father-in-law. But aside from those two issues, the only real impediment was that the parties, they really hated each other. Now, what's interesting is that at trial, all dad wanted was 50-50 time. Mom, on the other hand, wanted sole everything and majority time. The GAL believed they were both good parents, but they didn't get along, and that the kids needed joint 50-50 because otherwise the winner would cut the children out of the other's life. The opinion indicates mom wasn't facilitating a close relationship with the kids and dad, for his part, well, he was picking things like schools that were logistically inconvenient for mom. The judge ultimately orders joint 50-50. Mom, who was pro se at trial, appeals. Now, for those that don't do appeals, here's a really important concept you have to know: the standard of review. This is how big of an error the court has to make before the reviewing court will intervene. A lot of lawyers don't realize judges can be wrong, but they have to be wrong enough before a reviewing court intervenes. And how wrong they have to be depends on the issue they're appealing. In this instance, the standard review is manifest weight, which is like our middle standard, and actually it's our most common one. Now, what does that mean? Well, I've compared manifest weight in the past to kind of challenging the results of a weight loss contest. The appellate court doesn't get the contestants back on the scale to see if there's something wrong with the scale. What it does is it just kind of goes through the judge's decisions, and then it looks at the contestants from 50 yards away, and if it clearly looks off, then they'll intervene. Not a great analogy, but it's the best I can come up with. So here, mom on appeal is screaming virgin, which is my case, and I think that's a great case to cite, of course, right? But the appellate court is like, look, the facts here suggest giving one parent the keys would lock the other parent out, stating at one point the alternative to 50-50 might be devastating to the kids caught in the crossfire of these battling parents. So let's stop here and just clarify what these decisions are not. They don't say angry parents are entitled to 50-50. When you look at all four of these cases, the record shows either the GAL or 60410 gave some lip service to a check and balance system. And the conflict level for all these was moderate, but never high. So we are not passing the torch, at least not yet. But when I did the CLE Roadshow, I discussed McLean extensively, suggesting, well, it was probably a sign of things to come. And so far, that looks to be the case. I fully expect lawyers in moderate conflict cases, perhaps even high, to just jump on McAllister, RC, and McLean and argue they need 50-50 as a check and balance solution. Now, with all that said, let's get real. Is a check and balance system workable? Does 50-50 make sense, and joint 50-50 makes sense, I guess, in cases where mom and dad are trying to lock the other out? I mean, if mom wants the kids to do activity A, dad wants B, and you give them joint 50-50, not because they work well together, but because you believe sharing prevents one from taking advantage of the other, God bless it, but how are we not setting the case up for failure, or at the very least, more repeat trips to the courthouse? Now think of it this way. Let's say the kid's got to go to the ER for whatever reason, and there's two ways to address their grievous injury, but there needs to be a unified solution. Oh boy, heaven help that poor kid if mom and dad aren't on the same page. So I'm not sold on using 50-50 for that purpose, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe some of you colleagues out there have used it in those types of medium to high conflict cases, and it forced the parties to work together. You know, if you have an opinion on it, feel free to let me know in the comments if you want. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick thank you to all the dear viewers. Like the practice of law, being on this platform is always a privilege and never a right. So, thank you for your support. And if you like this video, well, feel free to hit that anonymous like button. It does make a difference. All right, we'll be back in a couple weeks with a hot off the press case and more updates on that upcoming domestic violence roundup. I'm guessing sometime after Memorial Day weekend. But if you want updates, feel free to subscribe to receive alerts. And as always, until that next time, thanks for watching.